This day could not get here soon enough. We have our definitive Denver Broncos training camp guide. We have surprising cuts, locks to make the team, biggest storylines to follow, and a ton more. Let's dive right on in here to our Denver Broncos training camp. We've got so much to go. We are just going through offense in this video, and I will do defense later in the week. But there are so many storylines, and it is going to be much must-watch Twitter viewing. Or hopefully if you are on the hill, I will catch you there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all of the different position groups, how many are typically kept on a roster, who I think is going to be kept on the roster, what are the pros and cons to different cuts we're going to do. We're going to start off right with the battle I think we are all most looking forward to, and that is the battle of the quarterback. Now, one thing that's important to note is that as I go through each of these, I'm going to tell you how many we've typically kept on the roster. We got to remember that the new kickoff rules are going to change everything because we're going to be keeping different special teams players than we have in the past. So starting right off with the signal caller himself, the Denver Broncos quarterback of the future, we got Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, and Bo Nix. We'll talk a little bit about each of them, what their pros are, their cons are, and what I think the Denver Broncos are going to do. So let's start off right off the bat with Stiddy. First thing that jumps out off the page to me is like this dude is a big game player, that he played Friday Night Lights in Texas. He is a leader of men. He was the one who organized the whole Camp Stiddy that just happened a few weeks ago where all the quarterbacks went out to Texas and balled with him. We remember that obviously he replaced Russell Wilson last year because Sean Payton said that the Denver offense needed a jolt, needed a spark. And I feel like he performed that spark that the rest of the NFL was dogging on us, saying like we're going to see a massive jump down from Russell Wilson to Stidham. And man, we did not see that at all, did we? We saw almost identical passing statistics from Stidham to Russell Wilson. So that leads me to wonder, like, does Stidham have better games in him than we saw? Because if he's just the quarterback that we saw at the end of last year, well, I think that is an improvement on Russell Wilson for a fraction of the cost. I don't think that's the quarterback of our future. However, as a quarterback for the Vegas Raiders, we know he did have some flashes, which is why we all had such high hopes last year that the game he played, I believe it was week 17 against San Francisco 49ers starters, one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. He just balled out of control, threw for almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then he had 30 yards with his feet. And I think that's one of the sneaky parts about Stidham is that he can move. A lot of folks are saying, do not be surprised to see Stidham get a lot of the first team reps today. Woody Page came out and wrote an incredible article that I'll link in the show notes, which basically was talking about the fact that, hey, what is best to do inevitably, or what you're going to do inevitably is best to do right now. Don't kick the can down the road. Let's get Bo Nix in there right off the bat. So if Sean Payton really does view Bo Nix as having a higher ceiling, why wait? Let's get Bo Nix in there. So then let's go to option number 2. Now, I certainly believe that this option number 2 was really the Bo Nix fallback plan. There was a coordinated effort from Sean Payton to make the rest of the NFL think that he truly wanted J.J. McCarthy. I think he was afraid Bo Nix was going to go before he had a chance to get him. And so I think Zach Wilson was Bo Nix insurance, that he was very clear, even once we got Zach Wilson, that we had been trying to trade for him for 2 months. And we did trade for him. His family was stoked about it. He went to the New York Jets, who ruined his career, but they ruined the career of a lot of quarterbacks in New York. The only worst place to play quarterback is probably Chicago. This dude has a cannon for an arm. I think what made him the second overall draft pick in that draft was the video of his pre-workout where he's throwing off of his back foot, fading to the left, and it just looks amazing. His best game as a pro was against the Pittsburgh Steelers, another fantastic defense in the NFL. But even his best game, he only threw for 1 touchdown. He did have 1 rushing touchdown, but he showed up really clutch in that game and had a game-winning touchdown drive. And so if you read all the things they say about Zach Wilson going into the draft, this is his coach Saleh talking about him, and he says, the things we value in a quarterback, he checks off every single box: accuracy, fearless in the pocket, doesn't turn the ball over. Now, we didn't always see those same traits with him with the New York Jets, and so if the Denver Broncos do end up only keeping 2 quarterbacks, I envision that being Stidham and Bo Nix. I think I really could envision a world where Zach Wilson, we move on for him. Perhaps we could trade him for something, but I just do not think he is the quarterback of the future, although there are some plugged-in NFL sources who think that because of Sean Payton and the way he's been falling down these coaching rankings, that it would make him incredibly happy to take the NFL's trash and turn it into a treasure. And imagine what he would be able to say to his peers of like, hey, you know that quarterback y'all just discarded? Look how I got him back in the Pro Bowl. And so that's interesting. But what I would hope to see is that Sean Payton takes all of that ego and channels it right into our Bo Leave candidate, Bo Nix. We've talked about him ad nauseum. The second we drafted him, Sean Payton is on FaceTime with Pat McAfee live to his ESPN show where he and Bill Belichick go on an entire love fest where they just rave about Bo Nix and what he can be. Most accurate quarterback in the history of college football, like with almost an 80% accuracy rating in college, which you can't even do on Madden. He's a film junkie. His coach at Auburn, and then most recently his coach in Oregon, came out and talked about how he watched more film than their coaches. He's the son of a coach, the son of a Auburn quarterback himself. And while he was the 6th overall quarterback selected in the NFL draft, we know that where a quarterback is selected has nothing to do with their performance in the NFL. And so my prediction right now, let's write it down, is that Bo Nix is the starting quarterback week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks, and we have something to believe in. So that's really, really exciting. So now let's go over to who is keeping Bo Nix clean and safe, and who are the locks for this team. Ending the year last year, PFF had the Denver Broncos offensive line rated the 7th in the NFL. And that's with Russell Wilson creating a bunch of sacks that really this should not be credited to this O-line. And we took massive steps forward in 2023. Just wait until we have a quarterback who gets the ball out as soon as he hits that last step of his drop. I think watch this offensive line be a top 10 at least rated offensive line in the league. Starts all out with Garrett Bowles, who was old when we drafted him, and now he's even older. He is on the last year of his deal. Unlike Courtland Sutton or others, he's not threatening a holdout or anything like that. He is here for it. As we talk about players who I could see us doing a similar situation to what we did with Quinn Miners, where we were able to get them locked down now so that they're not doing contract holdouts next year. We don't have to give them an even bigger bag when they hit free agency. We know a stud left tackle is hard to get in the NFL. Garrett Bowles has had some years where he has just led the league in penalties, and for whatever reason, the NFL has stopped calling holding calls on left tackles, which is great. And last year, he was one of our highest graded offensive linemen, only allowing 3 sacks from Russell Wilson's blindside. Pretty impressive that he was a 75 grade. He is a lock, and I would like to see him sticking with the team. If we could get him signed this year before the season even starts, that would be awesome. Hopping over to the other side, may have seen him in some highlighted in some of the new Netflix series Receiver, because he played for the San Francisco 49ers. Our right tackle, Mike McGlinchey, he had a couple penalties last year, so people started calling him Mike McFlinchy, meaning like he was flinching and causing false starts, but feel very, very high on him. And if you look at just different times in his career when he's been elite versus just being very good, last year for us, I would say he was good to very good. But then there's been times in his career where he was, back in 2020, he was rated almost 80, which is fantastic for a right tackle. I think it's going to be incredibly important for Sean Payton's offense to have this offensive line just be locked down. And again, without Russell Wilson spinning in the pocket and creating his own sacks, just look for him to have a year similar to what he had back in 2020. Did get injured the last 2 games of last year's season. But he said that if we were in playoff contention, he would have played the whole season. One of the cool things was like the first time in my memory, our offensive line was healthy throughout the whole year. And we're one of the only offensive lines that made it through the whole year. So let's go to the strength of our offensive line. Another lock. We just gave him the bag. Quinn Meinerz took a hometown deal. He is 4th highest paid guard, even though he is the highest ranked guard in the entire NFL on Pro Football Focus with almost an 84. I think for Sean Payton wanting that interior of the offensive line, he wants a clean pocket, and Quinn Meinerz will do that. He can pull. He definitely excels in the running game, but I think he's an adequate pass blocker as well, and that's why we gave him the bag and we have him locked up here. Going to the other side of him, we have another very capable guard in Ben Powers. And Ben Powers, again, another big dude. We're looking at just kind of have this offensive line, how it's changed over the time from being like a zone blocking system and those small dudes who had to move to now these behemoths. And now I just remember seeing Russell Wilson in those huddles and just seeming like a dwarf compared to all these massive linemen. Ben Powers is big, and he has had years where he has graded out very, very good. That back in 2021, he was a 66 grade. Last year, a 61 grade. But I think having two incredible guards will make our first decision on offense, other than the quarterback decision, a lot better. And so we really have two options for who is going to be replacing Cushenberry in the middle. We have Alex Forsyth, the rookie last year. He was a rookie out of Oregon, has great chemistry, great knowledge of Bo Nix and how he operates. So that might be a huge advantage. But the year before, we drafted Luke Wattenberg out of the University of Washington, who was a picked higher. Forsyth was a 7th round draft pick, where we got Luke Wattenberg in the 5th round. But these guys are really going to be battling at camp for who is going to be our starting center, and can either of those guys step up and equal the production of Cushenberry. My prediction going into the year is that Forsyth is the starter. We also did go out and get several other capable starting centers in Mustapha Throckmorton, and we'll get to them kind of as this video wraps up here. But that's really the offensive line where I feel incredible about 4 of the positions and feel pretty good about having options with high ceilings for both of these guys. Let's hop out to the tight end room. This was the worst room in the entire NFL last year, mainly because we did not get to see the glorious locks of Greg Dulcich much. I know in Broncos country, it is easy to hate on him and just be quick to move off of him and crown Lucas Krull as our future. But as Broncos fans, our best bet, you guys, is hoping that he is healthy. And one of the great things was the pre-training camp injury report came out, and he is not on it, meaning he will be playing. And that's fantastic news that when he was in the lineup, he was a difference maker. Remember that London game against the Jacksonville Jaguars where it felt like he was open all day, and Russell Wilson hit him actually in the middle of the field several times. And coming out of college at UCLA, people were so high on him. I got a chance to hop on a fantasy football YouTube channel a couple weeks ago, and they all just said that they have have Greg Dulcich as a very, very high tight end target for them, and their hopes are really high on him. So to me, this is option number 1 that we get him. Now, tight end room, we're really looking at having 3 tight ends on this team. Again, might that be 3 or 4? I mean, we're really getting to it now where every single one of these positions, if you're saying, oh, we bring 3 or 4, if you're always taking the higher number, you're way over the 53. So then let's go to the next option, obviously the heartthrob of the Denver Broncos, and this is Lucas Krull, who played some college baseball and then played for the University of Miami and also Pittsburgh. He played for the University of Miami, but it showed flashes last year that even coming off like just a few days after being signed, you see him flashing wide open in that Bills game. Russell Wilson targeting him on a 3rd down play in the back of the end zone to win the game against the Texans. We heard Sean Payton come out and say everyone's going to be looking in their media guide the first week saying who's number 85, but they won't be asking that question for long. And so there are a lot of hopes that we will make a great, great use out of Lucas Krull as tight end. Then next option I call the butt catch option, which is Troutman. And folks are saying that he is going to be our starting tight end going into the season, a very capable run blocking tight end as well. But we did see he has some hands, another behemoth of a man. And so I think there's a high floor on him. I don't think his ceiling as a pass catcher is anywhere near Lucas Krull's or Greg Dulcich's, but I think he's got he's an adequate pass blocker. Then we get to our Aussie-born friend, Thomas Yasmin from the University of Utah, and we took a look at some of his highlights against the CU Buffaloes, and he's a former rugby player, amazing with the ball. I've heard some interesting rumors that we might see him back there fielding catches as a kickoff returner and just being able to do kind of some of that rugby stuff. Very, very, very high ceiling catching the ball, but a low floor when it comes to blocking. There's a lot of run block schemes, pass block schemes that a tight end has to pick up, and he didn't grow up around the game of football, but very high on him, and folks are very curious how all this will break out. My guess is that if any of these guys are cut, they will not make it to our practice squad, and so I see us keeping 3 of these. But, who's the cut candidate there? My biggest hope is that we have Greg Dulcich healthy for the season. He's tight end 1, and that would be fantastic. Let's hop over to running back, where there's just crazy questions about what's going to happen at running back. Mike Kliss has talked a lot about this, about how really we are talking 3 running backs is probably where we're at, unless you have some of them as kick returners. And that's a more difficult thing in Denver because we know that Sean Payton carries a fullback who's going to, essentially be another running back. And so this is going to be tough. We are going to cut some players here or hopefully trade some players who are going to end up on another roster. But we got to start with the man who, if he is healthy, I want here more than anyone, and that's Javonte. That his rookie year, he had 1,200 yards from scrimmage, and just incredible that national podcasts like Bill Simmons and stuff were raving about Javonte and how you need to pick him up on your fantasy team. And we just know we didn't see that production after his knee injury. He is on a contract year. He knows he needs to show up this year. And so I think that would be the big hope in Broncos country, is that he is fueled by the doubt, fueled by all the talk about him being cut, and he comes out and just looks like he did his rookie year, and he's back from that injury that 5-10 years ago would have ended his career, and he's back to his old ways. We did see flashes of him last year getting to that level, and so could he do that again? Then we go to the player who Mike Kliss has said these 2 players are playing for one spot, and that's Samaje Perine, definitely an older running back. I think he's already 30 years old, but last year we saw him as Russell Wilson's security blanket, where he caught 50 passes out of the backfield. A lot of times that was Russell Wilson had scrambled away from the play. The rest of the receivers stopped coming back for the ball because Jerry Jeudy, if you didn't hit him when he was open, gave up on the play, and so Russell Wilson would do those little dump offs. But that 50 pass catches is nothing to bat an eye at, and so Samaje and Javonte probably playing for one spot there. I think if the training camp starts and Javonte is himself, I want to keep Javonte Williams on this team. So then we get to some of our newer players, and starting off with Jaleel. Seems like he is already a favorite of Sean Payton. You've heard him mentioned in the Joker role, insane speed, that he runs a 4.4 40, and he's only 5'7", and he really struggled last year in the pass block. And when he was in, teams knew he was getting the ball because he certainly could not pass block for Russell Wilson. He has added 8 pounds of muscle this offseason, has kept his quickness, and so the hope is he is ready to step in and be a capable 2-step back, and that he can block when it's needed. I think we need to surround Bo Nix with playmakers, and he certainly is that as one of the fastest dudes on our team. I would love to see him here. Then the guy who looks most like me with his shirt off, I'll show you at the end of the video to prove my point. Actually, I won't. But this is Audric Estime. Cecil Lammey said he's the most powerful running back to come out of the NFL or come out of college in the past 20 years. Compares him to Jerome Bettis. Absolute beast. Averaged 7 yards per carry at the University of Notre Dame. Incredible. The one caveat with him is that he had a knee scope, and everyone talks about the scar tissue that's caused by a knee scope, and could that hinder him going into training camp? We shall see. But I think looking at Sean Payton's offenses that have really popped in the past, he has had different types of running backs with a dash and a boom guy, a guy who can go straight up the middle, or a guy who can take it outside. And I love Jaleel and Audric for a long time on this team. And then we get to the guy who we gave some of the biggest guarantees to as an undrafted guy out of the University of Memphis, and that is Blake Watson. As capable a catching running back as anyone I've seen coming out of college. that he had 53 receptions his senior year in college and had 3 catching touchdowns and 14 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 6 yards a carry, tremendous vision. And you've heard Sean Payton kind of forced to make comparisons with him and Alvin Kamara and said, hey, I don't want to set that standard on anyone, but yes, there's some similarities there in him playing that Joker role. So you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys probably competing for 3 spots there, because we know that we got Michael Burton, fullback, does a fantastic job. Sean Payton loves him, and so he's going to be there. So we got 6 guys there competing for 4 spots probably. So let me know in the comments, who do you think are our cut candidates for running back? Again, I'm hoping Javonte's healthy. If for whatever reason we're able to see in the preseason that Jaleel has stepped up as that pass blocker in the backfield, that he can help keep the quarterback clean, I would not be opposed whatsoever to trading Javonte Williams. There's already rumors that Dallas Cowboys need a running back now that Pollard's gone. Ezekiel Elliott, I think he's actually back now, but he's not himself. And so could we get a 3rd-round pick for Javonte rather than just cutting somebody for nothing? That could be awesome. But that's going to be a really, really interesting room to look at. Let's go to the money-making room, the Netflix star room, the wide receiver, and a lot of question marks here. I think the biggest difference between us and a lot of other teams is that we have a lot of unproven guys here, but guys with incredibly high ceilings. And that's really different. When I talk to friends of other teams, they're like, well, outside of Devontae Adams, like, you can't name any other receiver on that Las Vegas Raiders team. Whereas the Denver Broncos, they don't have a Justin Jefferson, but man, we've got depth and guys who've proven it in shorter bursts and guys whose ceiling is tremendous. So let's start off with Courtland Sutton. He threw out on Instagram the other day that he is close to signing a new deal with the Denver Broncos. Unlike Jordan Love, unlike Ayuk, unlike CeeDee Lamb, he is not bringing extra drama to this. And he's played with 9 different quarterbacks in his time with the Denver Broncos. His best season, he had 72 receptions, over 1,000 yards receiving. We have not had a wide receiver equal that since then. His best seasons were definitely with Drew Lock, who could put the ball anywhere. And last year, he had some of the best catches in the entire NFL season, and I think they were all like the jump ball kind of plays that Russell Wilson really is good at, those moon ball plays. So I think Courtland Sutton's production could be close to this level again now that he can really explore the entire route tree, and it's just not go balls all day. But Courtland Sutton, I think, is a lock to be our wide receiver 1 if he is there, as everyone says he's going to be there. Next player I'm just insanely high on, you guys, is Marvin Mims. Insane 40 time. He's not quite as fast as Xavier Worthy, but he set records when he was at the University of Oklahoma. He was really Sean Payton's first player that he put his fist to the table and said, I need this dude. The Denver Broncos got him at the end of the 2nd round, and insane 40 time. Obviously, he made the Pro Bowl last year, albeit as a kick returner. But there were times last year where if his production had continued, he would have been 1,000-yard receiver last year. This tweet really stood out to me. That you remember that Commanders game where Russell Wilson actually looked pretty decent. It was the best I saw him with the Denver Broncos. And Marvin Mims had 5 receptions for 113 yards and a touchdown, and it just seemed like he was open the whole time. And he only ran 5 routes. He actually only 2 catches there. But I think Sean Payton talked about the only reason Marvin Mims wasn't better is we didn't get him the ball enough, and that's part of the reason we moved on from Jerry Jeudy. Was Marvin Mims will be playing that Jerry Jeudy role. He's expanded his routes and what he can run, and that's going to be a really fun thing to watch. Let's go to Mr. Reliable, other than the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers when he had a couple big drops. Josh Reynolds, a lot of people have him as a very, very solid wide receiver 3, and I think that's a great spot for him. Last year he had 40 receptions, 5 touchdowns. All my Detroit Lions friends were very, very sad to see him go. Obviously, knowing that he was drafted by the same team that drafted Puka Nacua, they see the talent there, and I think the sky is really the limit for him. If he was your wide receiver 1, that's a worry. but he's not. Like I'm talking, there's so many dudes better than him, and he just needs to be able to run those slants, which we saw him do with the Detroit Lions. I think Sean Payton is going to love having Josh Reynolds as an upgrade. Last year with Jerry Jeudy being such a flake, Courtland Sutton only being able to run one route, us not having a tight end, and us not having a quarterback that could do what Sean Payton had wanted. Like, think of how hamstrung he was versus what he has this year. Like, that is why he is always smiles and staying up for press conferences longer than before. Let's go to one of my favorite Broncos wideouts of all time. That is our boy Tim Patrick. He will not be wearing number 81 this year. He's going to be wearing number 12, which is what he wore in college after he came back from a much worse injury than he's coming back from this year. Back-to-back seasons where first week of training camp he has season-ending injury. So really, let's just not even say his name until the third week of training camp, and then we'll know we've overcome the curse. But his name is exactly. I didn't say it out loud, but his best season. Remember when Courtland Sutton went down with his injury? He came out and balled out of control, where he didn't even play that whole season. He had 51 receptions, almost 1,000 yards on only 51 receptions, and was just so clutch. So he is a lock, and he's saying he's feeling the best he's felt since that year. So that's a very, very good sign. Going to another Sean Payton favorite, showed flashes with us last year, little Jordan Humphreys. Nothing little about him. Massive dude. We saw one of the highlight plays last year for the Denver Broncos was his touchdown reception from Jarrett Stidham against the Chargers, and I think probably a cut candidate, honestly, as we just look like we still got a ton of receivers we haven't even talked about, like little Jordan Humphreys, but I do not see him making this team because we went out and we drafted one of Bo Nix's favorite targets from all of his 61 games playing in college was Troy Franklin. A lot of people had him mocked as a first-round draft pick. Somehow he fell and was a 16th overall receiver off of the board. This dude is explosive with the ball. He runs great routes. He struggled with drops, but there are a lot of people who think he might be the best rookie on this team. I got a chance to talk to a fantasy dude today. That video is going to come out in a couple of days here, and he said this is the player he's most excited about on the Broncos this year. And so where is Troy Franklin going to fall in all this? That remains to be seen. Another player who I think is going to make this roster and probably make this roster because of his kick return ability. I don't think we're going to have Mims return kicks just because of the change in the rules. It's a different skill set, but that's Jalen Virgil coming off of a really, really bad knee injury himself. But if you watch the video, he looks fantastic, documented his whole rehab, and seems to be ready to rock. And amazing kick returner. Also showed some flashes for the Denver Broncos. Remember last year or 2 years ago against the Tennessee Titans, he had that 60-some yard catch from Russell Wilson for a touchdown. So he's shown that he can do it in the NFL. I think he makes this team. Then we get to Devon Vele, who we picked in the 7th round, and people are like, who is he? And this guy has a RAS, relative athletic score, that is off the chart, one of the highest ever ranked at this position. Every bit of 6'4", explosive, strong, fast. Just looking that even at 6'4", he runs a 4.40, 4.47. Reminds me a little bit of Demaryius Thomas, where you look at his body and then say you should not be able to move like that at that size. And I think he makes this team because there's no way if he's cut, he makes our 53. And if you go out and you draft him, when there are guys that we know Sean Payton was on the phone as the draft was ending, calling guys to say, hey, come work out with us. And so he knew hey, I got to get this guy now because I'm not going to be able to get him in as an undrafted wideout. So just seeing, could he be Marquez Colston? What is he? He's going to make this team. He's a beast. Got a couple others here to go over. David Sills, who I didn't even make a slide for, capable. Think he does not make this team. And then Michael Bandy, who's a very Wes Welker slot type receiver, late season addition last year. I think even after the Russell Wilson benching, we got him again. I don't envision him making this team, But it is interesting to me that we don't really have like a pure slot receiver like a Brandon Stokely, Wes Welker. But I'm not sure if that's, or do we put Troy Franklin in the slot, but all that definitely is going to be interesting. Other couple interesting things to look at on the offense is that in addition to the great moves we made on defense, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, we also went out and seemed to get like an entire backup offensive line full of dudes who had started for other teams and played a ton of games, including Mustafa and Throckmorton, both pictured here. And so it's awesome to see that we do have that offensive line depth as well. And then the other player I'm crazy excited about is University of Wyoming standout Frank Krull, pictured at the top left there, who ran the fastest 40-yard dash for an offensive lineman. And just thinking what Zach Strief was able to accomplish with Quinn Miners, could he do a very similar thing with Frank Krull? And knowing that if anyone gets hurt in training camp, that we do have almost an entire starting offensive line who are capable backups. So all in all, a ton. Oh my goodness, I just saw the time, 31 minutes. That's a lot of me. Overall, ton of stuff to believe in. And if y'all like this, it took a little bit more time, but I will do the similar thing for the Denver Broncos defense if this was cool. Thank you for riding with me this entire offseason. We made it. We've got a ton to believe in.